Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras, and coming up in today's newscast, Israeli ambassador to the UN Dannon pushes for recognition of Jewish refugees. The IDF sends relief teams to Albania, and ILTV reveals this year's top 5 Israeli-made gifts to consider for the holidays. Once again, the United Nations is preparing to weigh in on multiple resolutions against Israel put forth by the Palestinian Authority. And amongst them is one resolution in support of the Palestinians' right of return. But in stark contrast to the typical, Israel's ambassador to the United Nations is today announcing plans to advance a resolution recognizing Jewish refugees from Arab countries too. Nearly 800,000 Jews are estimated to have fled Arab countries in the last century due to pogroms and other discriminatory government policies. And speaking to the UN, Ambassador Dannon explains that the international community, like so often, is comfortable focusing only on Palestinian refugees while, quote, erasing the story of hundreds of thousands of Jews from the history pages. But Israel will voice the truth and correct this historical injustice, he continues. Now, does Dannon expect this resolution to actually be adopted? Probably not. But either way, it does speak to a larger supposed hypocrisy at work at the United Nations. Namely, that Jewish refugees have since settled in Israel and elsewhere, but have never been recognized as peoples forced from their homelands, meaning their migration is essentially looked at as voluntary. Meanwhile, the estimated 750,000 Palestinian refugees from 1948 mostly left Israeli cities at the behest of invading Arab countries. Yet decades after their resettlement in Syria, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, and elsewhere, they, their children, and even their grandchildren all enjoy refugee status while demanding the return to the lands they abandoned. And now joining us with more from the United Nations is Ziv Maor, chairman of Israel Media Watch. Ziv, thank you so much for being with us today. What do you think about this resolution and its chances at the UN?
Well, first of all, the chances should be measured by what it is designed to achieve. And the thing that it is designed to achieve, first of all, is to shed light on the fact that currently the refugee status that is affiliated with what is so-called Palestinian refugees is different from the standard that is set by other UN institutions regarding what a refugee is. This is the aim of Dannon doing this and proclaiming or making this proclamation.
So he really does not, I mean, it's safe to say that he really doesn't expect this to be passed. It's just to shed light on the hypocrisy.
The fact that those 800,000 Jews that fled from Arab countries into Israel are, in fact, refugees according to the international law is doubtless. The meaning of it is completely meaningless. It has got no meaning whatsoever because the way that international law deals with the issue of refugees is an effort to resettle them in the best way possible, and international institutions only provide and offer help when the absorbing countries seek this help. Israel never sought help for the absorbment of those refugees, which are by definition indeed refugees. But the recognition that they are refugees is hoped to give some sense of balance to the Palestinian claim about the fact that the people who fled what was Palestine prior to 1948 are indeed refugees, which is correct might be correct for the people themselves, but not for their descendants. So what Israel is trying to do in this UN arena basically is try to balance the discourse. Nothing effective, nothing of an actual act is going to come out of it, no one expects it, but claiming that only this side of the equation, this side of the conflict suffered from the phenomenon of refugees is completely false.
So now let's take a look, though, at the Palestinian refugee problem, because regardless of what number you accept, there is a number. There is a number of Palestinians who qualify as refugees to some degree or another. If Dannon's measure is actually passed or is at least taken seriously, does that change the way that, the right of return that they're fighting for? Does that put that into question, or does it just add to the issue?
No, it's just a PR stunt. It has got no meaning whatsoever. The fact is that the way or the difference between Palestinian refugees are being dealt with is a result of the fact that UNRWA was founded before UNHCR. And UNHCR had in 1953, when it was founded, a certain definition of refugees, and the UNRWA, which was founded about 1950, 1949, had another definition. So UNRWA went on with its own definition, which does not work in accordance with the UNHCR definition. So that is the way it is. Now, the fact that those people who immigrated into Israel, Jews who immigrated into Israel, are going to be acknowledged as refugees according to the UNHCR definition has got no implication whatsoever on the UNRWA definition. That's the way it is. Once again,
so
it is a
ultimately,
clear stance.
even if this was accepted, which again we're pretty
no, it's not going to be
clear
accepted.
acknowledging that it's not, right? So even if it was, adopted, it doesn't really change anything from the Palestinian standpoint.
From the Palestinian standpoint, it's definitely not going to change anything. But the thing is that it is a part of the struggle that Israel is have on the global public opinion. The affiliation of the term refugee with a Jew in the context of the Arab-Jewish conflict is extremely important. The fact that most of the Arab countries are currently Judenrein, completely cleansed of Jews due to the actions of those governments, is a historical fact that needs to be noted when an individual make his own judgment about the moral aspects of the Arab-Jewish conflict. And claiming that there were indeed Jewish refugees that came to be out of the independence war of 1948, it's something that history has to take notes of and everybody has to know about when judging the conflict.
All right, well, it'll be really interesting to see what happens with this PR stunt, as we've called it. Ziv, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much.
In other news, Israel doesn't always get recognized for helping other countries during their times of need. That hasn't stopped the Jewish state from helping out anyway, and ILTV's Shanna Fold is here now with the story on the latest rescue crew that Israel has sent to Europe.
Early this morning, the IDF announced that it's sending off aid to Albania following an earthquake that quite literally rattled the country. 51 are dead and thousands are injured, with the November 26 earthquake's magnitude measuring a 6.4 out of 10. And it's now affecting 1.9 million people of the country's 2.8 million population. But the IDF is doing what it can to help on the ground. The IDF team consists of 10 regular and reserve troops that will be surveying buildings to see if they're still structurally safe following the tremor. And the Israeli team's Home Front Command and Foreign Ministry are also helping to manage the disaster by advising the local authorities in Albania on how to respond. Israel isn't the only country lending a hand, though. Albania's defense minister says 780 rescuers came to the scene from all around the globe. And Bebe Rexha, a U.S. singer-songwriter, has even flown in. Being of Albanian descent, the star has raised money through her fan base to help the country get back on its feet. Meanwhile, investigators in Albania are looking to blame the quake's damages on any possible illegal construction, as poor building structures and code violations are considered to be the top contributors to the massive destruction. But coming back to the Jewish state now, though Israel may be as small as the state of New Jersey, it has a history of reaching out after large natural disasters and helping in a big way. Following a Mexican disaster in 2017, Israel helped find survivors and missing people while also surveying 158 buildings, schools, hospitals, and government offices to make sure they were sturdy enough following the earthquake. Then, Israel aided Brazil in September of this year when the country battled massive wildfires throughout the Amazon rainforest. And the IDF also sent 130 people when the Minas Gerais dam collapsed in January 2019. In fact, the Holy Land was even the first on scene in January 2010 when a massive earthquake hit Haiti, paralyzing it until today. And likewise in 2011 when Japan faced a crippling earthquake as well. In 2004, Israel also sent aid to the U.S. following Hurricane Katrina and to Indonesia to help recover from the tsunami that wiped out communities in both Indonesia and Sri Lanka.
Moving on, shocking accusations of anti-Semitism and discrimination on campus in Canada are now making their way across the media. A university student in Canada is now being forced to resign from her student government position because she's going on a visit to Israel. The Canadian Jewish Advocacy Group is now instead coming down on the Legislative Council at McGill University in Montreal, though, after they took a vote asking Jordan Wright to remove herself from the committee over her planned participation in the trip. The trip in question is called Face to Face, and it's organized by the Hillel of Montreal, and the visit brings students to meet with both journalists, politicians, and locals from both Israel and Palestinian territories to better understand the nuanced conflict. But only Jordan was singled out for going. Wright says that other students who were going to join the trip who are not Jewish were not addressed, let alone asked to step down. But still, the committee says that Wright must either pull out of the trip or resign. Wright, on the other hand, has vowed to resist the measure, and she went on to say that this is not the first time Jewish students were bullied out of student government at McGill. In 2017, a Jewish student was removed from the university's student government for his mere involvement in Jewish life on campus. But that same year, a student and representative also on the board named Igor Sadikov called for violence on campus when he tweeted out "Punch a Zionist today." And when a motion was brought forward to remove Sadikov from his representative seat following the incitement and several other racist comments, students voted to keep him on board in a 5-4 decision. It's not yet clear how McGill will respond to this latest student council action. And here now in the studio to discuss McGill University's recent actions is Noah Amin, the Director of International Delegations and BICEP Programs with Stand With Us. Thank you so much for being with us. It's a pleasure to have you here. All right, so what's going on with this campus at McGill University? What's the situation?
Sure. So first, I would like to thank you for having me on air today. At McGill currently, I want to say firstly that this circumstance, this incident, is not common on campus. We had a Jewish student leader who is a part of the student council request to resign or cancel her trip to Israel. She's being intimidated to pick a stance, which in fact is anti-Semitic within itself.
So now the request, being anti-Semitic, putting that aside, is it lawful in any way? Can the student government actually follow through with the threat, or is it mostly just bullying?
No, it is bullying.
So they can't actually force her to step down. They can't impeach her, because I know that was one of Jordan Wright's fears, is that she would go on this trip and come back to an impeachment trial of some sort.
That's correct. So our Stand With Us executive director, Merle Cates, as well as the ADL, has condemned this action, that it is in fact anti-Semitic, and that the student council cannot request her to make such a request.
Well, how is McGill University responding? Because we haven't really heard much from the administration and the faculty itself.
They have not been responding that much.
At all. They're just not even. They're not. How can they afford to not respond to this?
I think things are still playing out. They're still finding what works. Then they haven't at least made a public incident or a public remark.
Are there other, I mean, I know you said that this is a pretty rare circumstance,
Sure.
but are there other Canadian universities that are maybe starting to head this way, or have you seen any remotely similar incident?
So each campus is very specific and it has its own campus climate. A majority of Canadians don't really pay much attention to what's happening in the Middle East, specifically to Israel.
Sure.
Most recent, we had a word swap delegation, our Stand With Us Canada word swap delegation, where we bring young Israelis to really showcase the beautiful faces of Israel, the diversity. They went and tabled at 15 different campuses where they spoke with over 3,000 students, and they found that most people were receptive to hear about the story of Israel, to learn what's happening on the ground here in Israel. Not to mention that they didn't ask tough questions, but they were willing to have a dialogue. And really what this word swap delegation did was encourage peace and tolerance for all.
How does this compare now to attitudes on campuses maybe in the United States?
So the polarization that takes place currently in the United States has not made its way towards Canada. But
you would say that it's worse in the United States in terms of...
I wouldn't say that it's worse than the United States.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right, well, we hope that this works out. Yeah, we hope Jordan, solves this issue without any...
Fortunately, she has a lot of the Jewish community behind her, supporting her. These anti-Israel groups are not going to intimidate students on campus. If anything, Stand With Us does, and one of its origins of what we've really tried to create is bringing people the education and the truth. And in order for these students to hear on their own and really discover on their own what is Israel by coming here.
Well, we're happy that she's going to get that opportunity now without hassle. Noah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, now the fight against single-use plastics is moving one step further in the Holy Land as the capital looks to update its policy in schools. Currently, Israel has a major problem with plastic. Citizens of the Jewish state are estimated to spend roughly $57 million on single-use plastics annually, and the results have been dramatic, from the landfills to the streets and, of course, to the beaches. In fact, Israeli schools in Jerusalem alone are responsible for using nearly 30 million disposable plastic products every year, according to Globes. but thankfully things are starting to change. Images of Greta Thunberg are being printed and posted in workplaces to encourage waste reduction. Individuals across the country are banding together to protest the country's dependence. And now the Jerusalem municipality is additionally taking action. With some 7 to 8 million shekels in funding, the capital is now preparing to set up a plastic-free environment in Jerusalem schools, starting with the kindergartens and community centers. Mayor Moshe Leon revealed the decision following the success of a 6-month pilot, and the plan is to simply replace disposable plasticware with reusable and washable dishware. Also, each school will adopt a plan that fits best for them, whether it's a dishwasher, hand washing, or even sending dirty dishes home to be washed by parents. Hundreds of kindergartens in the ultra-Orthodox and Arab Israeli communities will not make the switch just yet, though, citing logistical issues. And most likely this is due to dietary and kosher restrictions that make the change a bit more complicated. That said, the national non-religious kindergartens also follow such rules, and no explanation for the discrepancy has yet been given. Speaking of school, Israel's education system has another problem to address: the growing education gap between predominantly Hebrew and Arabic-speaking students. Well, here with the details is Israeli consumer behavior expert Dr. Vili Abraham. Dr. Abraham, now, how is this measured? What is the exam that was used to put this into metrics, and what does it mean?
Okay, so first of all, this test is conducted every 3 years among 15-year-olds, and it tests reading abilities, math, and science.
Okay, so just like the STEM core subjects.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah, these are the stuff. And basically what we can see now that in comparison to the last 3 years, or in 2016, the gap between different populations in Israel has increased. So if we look at the gap between Israelis and Arabs, it's huge. If we look at the gaps within the Jewish community in Israel, it's also increasing. And the major gap is between the haves and have-nots.
Not like religious, secular, or from city to city, but really socioeconomic status.
Exactly, yeah. Because the thing is that if you're from a well-off family, then the family has the money to hire private tutors, and if you don't, then you can't get that privilege.
So it's really the private tutoring and kind of the side education more so than it is the school itself?
Although I have to say that schools are investing more resources, which actually comes from the Ministry of Education, but I guess it's not enough because a lot of times there are weak students who need more support, but the school says, well, we have limited resources, so we can only provide you 1 hour of class, extra class a week.
All right, now, are there any kind of other factors that are driving this, and how does that translate into the real world later on?
Well, what's interesting is that if you look at the income gap in Israel, there's a survey that was published recently, and actually shows that between 2015 and 2017, the income gap has decreased in Israel's society, and in 2018 it has increased. So you can see the connection between the increasing gap in income and the increasing gap in educational performance.
But then why are we seeing like a decrease in the gap and then a sudden increase? Was that also relativistic to the educational gap during those years? Because I thought that the educational gap just got worse over the last 3 years.
Well, it was quite good and stable in the last time that the students were examined. But now there is a decrease, meaning that there's a greater gap in performance. So this could be seen because of performance of the economy. And one of the things that I think have driven this major gap is the fact that prices of apartments and houses have increased so much. So if you see what happened in the last 3 years, the people who were able to buy apartments paid less mortgage because the interest rates decreased. But those who lived in apartments, rented apartments, they paid more money because rents have increased disproportionately. Sure. So it means that if you have money, you have more money left over, and if you have less money, you have less money left over because you're paying more money for it.
There are a lot of factors going on in here. Sounds like. All right, well, what is the Education Ministry really doing to address this parity?
Okay, so they've invested a lot of resources into extracurricular activities, tutoring, extra hours that teachers are putting in. And in reaction to this latest statistic that we've seen regarding the gap, they say that they were going to form a committee to check why have resources not been allocated according to how they were designed to be allocated, because reading between the lines, they're saying, look, we've allocated a lot of money and hours, something went wrong, so we want to see what happened. So it might be either changing the way the resources are allocated, or maybe increasing allocation, meaning increasing the budgets.
All right, well, I'd love to have you back in here when we figure out maybe the results of this committee's study. Dr. Abraham, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, now in other news, the holiday season is upon us. So for your consideration, here's ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh with the top 5 gifts from the Holy Land.
There's absolutely no better time of year than the holiday season. Family time, tons of great food, and best of all, endless presents. And it doesn't get any more special than to get your family and friends presents from Israel. Here's ILTV's list of some amazing gifts to give. First up, a good cookbook. The Sababa Fresh, Sunny Flavors from My Israeli Kitchen book, written by the American-Israeli food writer Adina Sussman, contains over 125 recipes for dishes inspired by the bustling stalls of the Tel Aviv Carmel Market. Best of all, the book is only $25. If we're already on the topic of cooking, another gift idea is the Cindiana Trio gift set. The gift package contains 3 bottles of extra virgin olive oil produced by a fair trade nonprofit in the Upper Galilee, who, by the way, employ both Jewish and Arab women. This olive oil has won awards and is the perfect house blend for every need, from cooking to skincare, and only costs $22. What would a good meal be without a gorgeous dish to put it in? That's why the third gift is a 7-species Armenian serving bowl. This 10-inch ceramic bowl was handmade and painted right here in the Holy Land and is a favorite in shops in the Old City in Jerusalem. This gift is a beautiful piece for any house to have and only costs $50 to get. A map of Israel by the Jerusalem scribe is another special gift to give, created by the scribal artist Kalman Delmo, who offers a colorful calligraphed map of Israel that's made up of words of the prayer for Israel and is a bit on the expensive side, costing $200. A little high-tech gift idea would definitely be the Taito Home Medical Exam Kit. This little kit and telehealth platform is designed so you don't have to drag your kids to the doctor so often. This medical kit examines body temperature, heart, lungs, skin, ears, and throat, and sends the results to a healthcare provider. The device itself only costs $300, and each exam doesn't exceed more than $60. Definitely worth it if you ask a hypochondriac like myself. Of course, there are endless gift ideas to get any family member or friend, but these are ILTV's top 5 just to help you get started right before the holiday season.
All right, new mosaic findings in Israel's north are now opening the door to a long-lost thriving community of Jews that little is known about. When the Second Temple fell in the 1st century, Jews scattered out of Jerusalem as Romans invaded and brought down the city's walls. Some hid out in the desert, and many fled the region altogether. But with new rainbow ceramic tiles, a Jewish community that seems to have survived and thrived during these times has now been located in the ancient town of Majulia. And it's changing what anthropologists previously thought. Not only did Jews live in the city, but they put a lot of effort into decorating their public spaces. Excavation director Dr. McGill Ozban said that findings show a turn in synagogue usage. Jews used to use synagogues as study halls, but the ruins lead these excavators to believe that the buildings became prayer halls at this point in time. The mosaics don't show any pictures in full, just limbs of animals can be made out. But researchers believe that the mosaics may have been intentionally dismantled. Archaeologists say that while synagogues used to be unadorned, this time period saw the addition of mosaic tiles and colors to prayer houses, inviting community members to be a part of the synagogue and treat it as a community gathering space. Excavations from this area also gained media attention when Ozban discovered a Roman period synagogue that was abandoned around 350 CE, and it looks similar to modern synagogues in this Golan area and throughout Israel today. Ozban also uncovered remnants of a potter's kiln, considered the first of the era to be found, along with olive presses. And while other archaeologists might not have put the time or effort into uncovering this small bit of mosaic, Ozban said it's only the patience of masters like himself and his team that could bring these few pictures of historic Jewish life to the public. Oh man, that is just the coolest story. I love all these archaeological findings. It seems like pretty much everywhere you go, you flip over some stone and there's like another synagogue or some 5,000-year-old building. It's really amazing. But on that note, let's take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be partly cloudy and cool with lows around 50 degrees Fahrenheit or 10 degrees Celsius. Then tomorrow should be partly cloudy again, but with a slight drop in temperatures, and the high is expected to be around 69 or 21 degrees Celsius. And that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.48 shekels to the American dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and of course, subscribe to our YouTube. I'm Aaron Porras. Thank you so much for watching.